This video is for section 2.3. And in section 2.3, we kind of combined the topics that we talked about in section 2.1 with the topics that we talked about in section 2.2. Okay? So just to kind of give a little bit of introduction to what we're going to be looking at here, we're going to have a graph of some kind of function. This is kind of a typical cubic function. And in section 2.2, we talked about finding the roots, using the graphing calculator to find those roots. In this section, we're going to talk about the question, where is y greater than or equal to 0? And where is y less than 0? Okay? And this is where the things that we talked about, the concepts that we talked about in section 2.1 are going to be important, because the answers to these questions will be intervals involving inequalities. Okay? So you can see right here, this is where y is positive, right? On the y-axis, this is where the positive y's are, that's where the negative y's are. So where is y greater than or equal to 0? Going to be here, and also going out in that direction. Okay? And then where is y less than 0? That's down here. And so that will correspond to these x values. And then again, here's the y being less than 0. And here are the x values that produce those negative y values. Okay? So let's look at some concrete examples from section 2.3. And hopefully you'll get a little bit better idea of how this exactly works. Okay, so problem 2, let's see here. Problem 2, we're working with y equals 4x cubed minus 4x squared minus 19x plus 10. And we're being asked the two questions, where is this graph greater than or equal to 0? And then also, where is this graph less than 0? Okay, so the first thing we want to do is graph this. So we hit the y equals key. And we go ahead and type this in. 4x to the third minus 4x squared minus 19x plus 10. And then we hit graph. And in the standard window, I'll come over and show you what this looks like here. Okay, so there's what it looks like in the standard window. And you can see all of this empty space right here on the x-axis. Okay, and you can also see how the graph goes off of the screen a little bit above and below. So I'm going to change our window here. So if you see that window button, if you hit that, right, you'll have an opportunity to change your x minimum and x maximum and the y minimum and y maximum. So I'm going to bring the x's in. I'm going to change this to x minimum -5, x maximum +5. Okay, so there's that. And then I'll change the y's, y minimum -20 and y maximum +20. And that should give us a little bit better look at what that graph looks like. Okay, so that's a little bit easier to work with. So let's go back to the board here. There we go. And I'll draw a little picture of that graph here. And remember what our window is, -5 to +5, -20 to +20. And in that window, our graph looks something like this. Okay. So now we need to go in, and you can do this in the standard window. You don't necessarily have to change the window. I just like to see the whole curve when I'm doing one of these problems. Okay, so let's go in and find these roots. Let's see, that one is -2. And then the next one there falls between 0 and 1, and that is right at 0.5. And then that last root is between 2 and 3, and that is at 2.5. Okay, so now we've identified the roots, and these are important because these roots are the x values, right? When x is negative 2, y is equal to 0, and so that's the dividing point between where y is positive and where y is negative. Okay, and that's true for all these roots. That's why we want to know their values, right? Because they're going to be the endpoints of these intervals. So where is y, right? Because this is y is equal to this expression, so this is y. So where is y greater than or equal to 0? Well, that's up here, okay? And then also over here. So the x values that make y positive are these x values in here, and then also these x values out here. So this interval right here is x less than or equal to 0.5, but greater than or equal to negative 2. Or this other interval over here is x greater than or equal to 2.5. Okay, so that's where y is greater than or equal to 0. And now we want to know where is y less than 0. So that's down here and also over here. So here's the x values that make y less than 0, and here are the other x values that make y less than 0. So our intervals will be x less than negative 2, or over here it's x less than 2.5 but greater than 1/2. Okay, so that's the way these questions in the first part of section 2.3 are set up. We've got a graph, right, that we want to look at, and then we want to figure out which x values make y positive, which x values make y negative. Okay, so let's look at problem 4. Okay, so in problem 4, this is also a cubic equation. We start out with x cubed minus 3.5x squared plus 0.5x plus 5. And so the questions we're going to be answering are, where is this graph greater than or equal to 0? And where is this graph less than 0? All right, so let's go ahead and put that graph on the graphing calculator and see what it looks like. So x to the third minus 3.5x squared plus 0.5x plus 5. And when we're relying on technology to help us with so much of the problem, I encourage you to double check what you've typed in because it's really easy to mishit one of those buttons. Okay, so let's see here. In the standard window, here let's take a look at what this looks like in the standard window. So there it is. I'm just going to keep this in the standard window for now, but it's kind of hard to see what's going on right over here, whether that's one root, two roots, or no roots. So when we get to that point, I think I'm going to put a box around that and do a zoom box so that we can see more clearly what's happening there. But to get us started here, I think I'll just stick with the standard window. So let's take a look at what this looks like here. Looks something like this. And again, that's the standard window, negative 10 to positive 10. Okay, so let's find this root before we focus on what's happening over here. All right, so let's see, that first root looks like it's going to be right at -1, but I would encourage you to confirm that. You can do that by using the 0 feature, second trace. Choice number 2 is find the 0. You can also look in the table, and I'll show that when I come over to hold the calculator up to the camera to zoom in on this section right here. So let's take a look at that. So first off, if you want to see the table, you see right above where it says graph there on the right-hand side, it says table. So if you hit that blue second key and then graph, you'll see a table. And you can see when x is -1, y is equal to 0. And while we're in the table here, you can also see that when x is 2, y is equal to 0. So 2 is going to be one of our roots. But let's go back to the graph, and then I'll do a zoom box to zoom in on this area right over here so that we can get a better look at what's happening. So remember to do zoom box, you hit that zoom key, and then choice number 1 is zoom box. And now there's the cursor. I'm going to arrow over. Let's see if I can do this while it's on the screen. Yeah. So I'm going to arrow over, and then I'll set, that'll be the bottom left-hand corner of our new window. So then I hit enter, and now let's open up the box here, go to the right a little bit, a little too far. Now let's go up a little too much. So that looks like a pretty good window. That should give us a good look at what's happening there. Okay, so now we'll hit enter, and there it is. That's what we're working with right there. Okay, and we already saw in the table that root on the left-hand side, that is where x is equal to 2. Okay, but I'll go ahead and confirm that by using the root finder. All right, so now let's get back to what we're doing over here. I'll draw a little picture of that second window so we can see what's happening here. So there's the x-axis, and here's the curve coming down and then going back up. And yeah, this looks to be right at +2. And we already saw that in the table. I don't really need to do this on the calculator because we did see it in the table. Okay, so there's that one. And then the next root is over here. And that is going to be 2.5. Okay, so now we're ready to answer this question. Well, at least 2 questions. Where are the y's greater than or equal to 0? And where are the y's less than 0? And then also in this little picture down here, we've got this one little section where y is less than 0. Okay, so y greater than or equal to 0 is going to be in this region right here between -1 and +2, and then again starting at 2.5. Okay, because we know it's negative in between there. So this will be x less than or equal to 2, but greater than or equal to -1, or x greater than or equal to 2.5. And then where is y less than 0? Let's see, there's this region right here, all these x's less than -1, make y negative, or this interval right here between 2 and 2.5 are where y is negative. So that's x less than 2.5, but greater than 2. Okay, so that's problem 4. We've got 2 more to look at. Good. Problem 6. So problem 6 is a 4th degree equation. which means it's going to be pointing up on both sides, just like all of the even-powered graphs. So this is x to the fourth minus x to the third minus x squared plus 3x minus 5. And then we've got to answer the questions. Where is this greater than or equal to 0? And then also, where is this graph less than 0? Okay. Now let's take a look at the graph on here. Let's see here. X to the fourth minus x cubed minus x squared plus 3x minus 5. And we'll go back to the standard window and see what it looks like. And this is a pretty simple graph. It shows up really nicely in the standard window. Kind of does something like this. Okay, so we've only got two roots here, really. And so we just need to go in and find out what those roots are. Let's see, that one is negative 1.687. And then the other root positive 1.634. Okay. And like I said, this is kind of a simplistic function. It's positive here, and it's negative down here. Okay? So, where are the y's greater than or equal to 0? That's going to be out here, or out here. And then the y's are going to be less than 0 for those x values between the two roots. Okay, so this will be, let's see, x less than or equal to negative 1.687, or x greater than or equal to 1.634. And then where are the y's less than 0? That's going to be x less than 1.634, but greater than negative 1.687. That's a negative 1 right there. There we go. Okay, so that one was relatively straightforward. There wasn't a whole lot happening with that graph, so that was kind of a simple problem. So let's go ahead and take a look at problem 8. Okay, problem 8 is also a fourth degree equation, so that means it's going to go up on both sides. So, in problem 8, we've got 4x to the fourth minus 4x cubed minus 7x squared plus 4x plus 3. And then we need to answer these two questions. Where is this graph greater than or equal to 0? And then also, where is this graph less than 0? Less than 0. Okay, well, let's put it on the graphing calculator and take a look at it. X to the fourth minus 4x cubed minus 7x squared plus 4x plus 3. And let's see what it looks like in the standard window. Well, let me show you what it looks like, because I think I'm going to kind of zoom in on that section in the middle. You can see I've got all this empty space here on either side of the x's. So I think I'll just bring the x's in a little bit and just make them run. So if we go into the window section, I'm going to change this to -5 to +5 instead of -10 to +10. And there it is. And then if we hit graph again, that'll take us back. And there it is. It's a little bit better. Look at that. Okay. And again, you don't have to do that, or you can look at it in a different window, just so long as you can see where the roots are. Okay. So, change my x's to go from -5 to +5, and the y's are still -10 to +10. And so this is coming down and kind of doing this, making this big W shape. So these x to the 4th graphs, they do a bunch of different things. Like if you just graph y equals x to the 4th, it kind of looks like a parabola. And that'll be true for all the even powers. We just saw another x to the 4th that kind of looked like a deformed parabola. That's something that it does as well. And then it also makes these big W shapes. Okay, and you can see how the relationship sort of between this and this, you know, these are very similar to each other. Okay, so we need to go in and find these roots. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, if you want to, one thing you can do is if it looks like some of these roots are on whole numbers, well then you can go into the table and see whether or not there are any whole numbers that give you a y value of 0. So, right, if you hit that second, the blue second key, and then graph, you can see above it, it says table, then that'll bring us to the table, and you can see at -1 and +1, those are both roots. And there it is on the graph. You can see it going through -1 and also going through +1. So let's see here. Okay, there we go. So let's identify these roots. Yeah, so that one on the far left is at -1. And then the one next to it, let's see where that is. That is -1/2. And then that next root, I think that's going to be at +1. Yeah. And then the one next to it, I think, is going to be +1.5. Yeah. 1.5. Okay. So now we've got the roots identified. So where is the graph positive? So that's up here, this section in the middle, and over here. So you've got one interval there, a second interval here, and a third interval here. So these are all the different x values that make y positive. Okay, so that is x less than or equal to -1, or x less than or equal to 1, but greater than or equal to -1/2. That's this middle section. And then this last piece over here, or x greater than or equal to 1.5. So those are all the regions where the y's are positive. And then you've got these two regions, one here and one here. That's where the y's are negative. And so let's see, those are going to be x less than 1.5 but greater than 1, or x less than -1/2 but greater than -1. Okay, so that's the basic idea for these problems. We'll have a quiz that goes along with this section, and then I'll make a second video to finish up the problems in this section. And I will get that posted tomorrow.